In the far reaches of space, on a lonely frontier outpost, a young medic defies ancient laws to save a fragile dragon hatchling that should never have survived. But when alien rulers demand its death and a council prepares to pass judgment, one impossible moment will decide whether compassion can stand against power and whether a single spark of life can change the fate of two civilizations. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, let's jump into the story. The storm outside the frontier outpost rattled the metal walls like an endless drum. Lena Morven sat alone in the dim light of the storage room, her hands hovering above a strange oval resting on a bed of heated cloth. The egg shimmered with faint green streaks that pulsed like veins under glass. Every few seconds, the surface flickered with the blow of life. She leaned closer, her breath held, but afraid that even the smallest movement might disturb what was happening inside. For 3 long days, she had guarded the egg, adjusting the temperature and humidity of the makeshift incubator she had built from spare medical supplies. She had taken readings, logged every change, and whispered encouragement into the silence. And now, at last, the cracks had begun to spread across the shell like tiny lightning bolts. Lena was a medic, not a scientist. Her assignment on Outpost Haven 9 was to treat miners and farmers who worked the rough land of this distant world. Yet fate had brought her something no human training manual had prepared her for. A young colonist child had stumbled into the clinic, clutching the egg, terrified and trembling. The child had begged her not to give it to the alien patrols who ruled this planet. The story was simple, but haunting. The egg had been left behind in the forest, its surface cold, almost lifeless. The child said that the mother creature had abandoned it. Lena could have turned it away. She knew the laws clearly. No human was permitted to interfere with native species, especially not the dragons that were sacred to the alien rulers. But the thought of letting something so fragile die in her hands was unbearable. She remembered the oath she had taken, a vow to preserve life wherever it was found. The egg trembled again. A sharp sound split the quiet. A thin crack widened, and for the first time, a tiny claw pushed through, wet and glistening under the artificial light. Lena's heart pounded. Her voice broke the silence, soft and gentle. "Come on, little one. You can do this." The shell gave way, piece by piece, until a small head emerged, scales gleaming with shades of blue and green. The hatchling's eyes were sealed shut, its body no larger than a house cat, its damp wings folded against its sides. It made a faint cry, a sound between a bird's call and a lizard's hiss. Lena reached for a sterilized cloth, carefully clearing the thin membrane from its face so it could breathe. The hatchling shivered under the warming lights, pressing against the soft padding she had prepared. Lena adjusted the incubator's temperature, her hands steady, though her mind raced with questions. She had read every medical record she could find on this species, though human knowledge was limited. Most abandoned dragon hatchlings never survived more than a few hours, and yet here it was, alive in her care, fragile but determined. She prepared a small feeding syringe filled with the formula she had mixed after long nights of research. Holding the creature with one hand, she guided the syringe to its mouth. At first, it resisted, making small chirps of confusion, then finally accepted the nourishment. Relief swept through her as she watched it swallow, tiny throat muscles working to take in life. In that moment, the world outside the storage room seemed to vanish. There was no storm, No strict alien laws, no distant council waiting to judge her actions. There was only the bond between a human medic and a newborn creature that trusted her completely. But Lena knew the peace could not last. The outpost was monitored. Every supply was accounted for, every action recorded. If word spread that she was sheltering a dragon hatchling, punishment would be swift and unforgiving. Yet, as the tiny being pressed its head against her hand, seeking warmth and comfort, she felt the weight of choice settle heavily on her shoulders. She whispered again, as if promising the creature and herself at the same time, "You're safe now. I'll protect you." The minutes passed, filled with the hatchling's faint cries and her careful touch. Its tail curled around her wrist, instinctively searching for security. She studied the creature's delicate form, noting the slight bend in one wing. A flaw, perhaps the reason it had been abandoned. Still, to her eyes it was perfect in its own way. Suspense grew with every sound in the corridor outside. Footsteps echoed once, then faded. Lena froze, her breath shallow, waiting for the door to burst open. When silence returned, she exhaled and turned back to the hatchling. This secret could not be hidden forever. She knew that. Yet the thought of surrendering the little life in her arms felt impossible. The hatchling chirped again, a fragile sound that filled the sterile room with hope. The storm outside roared louder, as if the planet itself warned her of the path she had chosen. But Lena remained steady, her resolve deepening with each beat of her heart. She would not abandon the creature, not now, not ever. Unseen by her, a small red light above the door flickered on, signaling the presence of a security recorder. The world would soon know of her choice. But in this first, forbidden moment of birth, Lena only saw the miracle before her. The silence in the storage room shattered when the door swung open without warning. Lena Morvan froze, the feeding syringe still in her hand. The newborn hatchling whimpered softly against her palm, its scales glowing faintly under the warming lights. Standing in the doorway was Director Halvik, the administrator of Outpost Haven 9. His narrow face was set in lines of disapproval, and behind him loomed two towering alien figures whose crimson scales gleamed with authority. Lena's heart raced. She knew these visitors were not ordinary patrols. The taller of the two was Governor Sevrak, the highest alien official in this sector. His ornate armbands reflected his rank, each movement calculated to show power. Beside him stood Drovan, a scientist known for his cold efficiency, her yellow eyes sharp and unwavering. Director Halvik's voice cut through the heavy air. "Nurse Morvan, what exactly do you think you are doing?" Lena opened her mouth, but no words came. She instinctively shielded the hatchling with her arm, its fragile body pressed against her, as if it too sensed the danger in the room. Governor Sevrak stepped forward, his scaled face twisted with disdain. "This is an outrage," he hissed. His voice carried a tone that echoed authority and finality. "A direct violation of our sovereignty. Humans are forbidden from interfering with dragonkind. This egg was abandoned for a reason." The words stung, but Lena stood her ground. "It was dying," she said, her voice steady though her heart trembled. "I couldn't let it perish. It deserves a chance." Scientist Drovan tilted her head, her clawed hand gesturing toward the small deformity in the hatchling's wing. "Look at it closely," she said. "Its mother abandoned it because it is defective. Nature itself rejected it. Your interference undermines the balance of survival on this world." Lena's throat tightened. She glanced at the hatchling, whose tiny amber eyes had begun to open. It blinked up at her, unaware of the storm surrounding its existence. "It's still alive," she whispered, "and life has value even if it's not perfect." Director Halvik cleared his throat uneasily. His position was torn between the laws of the aliens and the compassion of his staff. "Governor Sevrak, perhaps we should—" But Sevrak interrupted, his voice sharp as steel. "There will be no discussion. The specimen is to be terminated immediately. And this human will be punished for her disobedience." The hatchling chirped at the sound, a fragile cry that pierced the cold atmosphere. Lena tightened her hold, her protective instinct stronger than fear. "No," she said firmly. The single word seemed to echo in the small room. A tense silence followed. Drovan's expression darkened, and Halvik rubbed his temples as if already weary of the conflict. Then another voice entered. Dr. Marin Solis, the chief physician of the outpost, stepped through the doorway. She held a tablet in her hands, her posture calm but resolute. "Under the Interstellar Treaty," Dr. Solis said evenly, "any dispute involving ethical conflicts between humans and draconian law must be reviewed by a formal hearing before action is taken. Nurse Morvin acted according to human medical ethics. This qualifies for review." Sevrak's scales flared darker, a clear sign of his rising anger. "This is not an ethical conflict. This is a violation of law. There is nothing to review." But Dr. Solis did not flinch. She lifted her tablet and displayed an official petition already filed with the Colonial Authority and the Draconian Council. "It is already in motion. You cannot execute or confiscate without process. The hatchling stays here until the review is complete." Director Halvik leaned over to inspect the document. After a moment, he gave a reluctant nod. "The petition appears valid, Governor. We have no choice but to follow protocol." Governor Sevrak hissed low, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "Very well. You have 24 hours to prepare your case. But understand this, human." His yellow gaze fixed on Lena like a blade. "You have interfered with forces far beyond your station. When this tribunal convenes, the outcome will be clear. The aberration will be destroyed, and you will face the consequences of your defiance." With that, he turned sharply and strode from the room, Drovan following close behind. The heavy door slammed shut, leaving the medic, the director, and the physician in strained silence. Halvik's shoulders sagged. He looked from the hatchling to Lena with an expression caught between frustration and pity. "Do you realize what you've done?" he asked softly. "Sevrak holds enormous influence with the High Council. This could cost you everything: your post, your license, even your freedom." Lena stroked the hatchling's small head, calming its trembling body. "I couldn't let it die," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I swore to preserve life, no matter the form." Dr. Solis placed a steadying hand on Lena's shoulder. "Then we must prepare. Compassion is powerful, but it will not be enough on its own. We need evidence, we need facts, and we need to understand this hatchling better than anyone else in the room tomorrow." The hatchling nestled against Lena's hand, its trust unshaken despite the storm surrounding it. She felt the weight of the world pressing down, but also a spark of determination rising inside her. The council's judgment was coming, and she knew the hours ahead would decide not only the fate of the fragile creature in her arms, but perhaps the fragile trust between two civilizations. The storm had passed outside, but inside Outpost Haven 9, the night felt heavier than ever. Lena Morvin sat in the small medical ward, her eyes fixed on the tiny hatchling curled inside a clear carrier she had adapted from medical supplies. The creature, now named Ceres, shifted restlessly, its scales glimmering faint shades of blue and green under the soft lights. Every time it chirped, a fragile sound that echoed hope, Lena felt her resolve deepen. The council hearing was only hours away. She knew the outcome could decide not just the hatchling's fate, but her own. Exile, punishment, or disgrace, all were possible if she failed. The thought lingered like a shadow, but she pushed it aside. Survival, both hers and Ceres's, depended on preparation. Dr. Marin Solis entered quietly, carrying a stack of tablets filled with medical notes. Her expression was calm, but the lines around her eyes told of long hours and heavy responsibility. She placed the tablets on the desk. "Lena, we don't have much time. The Draconians respect only strength, evidence, and logic. If we go in tomorrow with nothing but compassion, they'll crush our case before it begins." Lena nodded, though her throat was dry. "What do we need to prove?" Dr. Solis glanced toward Ser, who was stretching its small wings against the walls of the carrier. One wing folded neatly, while the other bent at an awkward angle. "We need to show that this hatchling has value beyond its deformity. Intelligence, adaptability, resilience, anything that proves survival is possible. They believe imperfection is weakness. We must show them imperfection can also be strength." So the night began, not with rest, but with endless work. Lena documented everything. She recorded Ceres's feeding schedule, its growth in the short hours since hatching, and every small behavior that revealed awareness. To her surprise, Ceres was learning quickly. It recognized her voice, turning its head when she spoke. It even tapped at the carrier's surface in response to sound, as if testing its environment. At one point, Lena placed a small reflective instrument inside the enclosure. Ceres studied its own image, tilting its head, then tapped the glass again. "That's not instinct," Lena whispered. "That's curiosity." She quickly logged the observation. As the hours dragged on, fatigue pressed hard, but hope flickered brighter with each discovery. Ceres's reflexes were sharp. Its appetite grew stronger. Even its breathing patterns hinted at an unusually healthy metabolism. The deformity remained, but it did not slow the hatchling's determination to move, to test, to explore. Dr. Solis leaned over the data, her eyes scanning line after line. "This is remarkable. Most newborn dragons would still be struggling just to stay awake, but Ceres is already showing cognitive responses far beyond normal baselines." Lena smiled faintly, brushing a hand against the glass of the carrier. "You hear that, little one? You're already proving them wrong." But moments of joy were fleeting. Tension filled the ward like a weight. Both women knew Governor Sevrak and the other draconian officials would not be swayed easily. Their traditions were ancient, their laws absolute. Any flaw, any we, was grounds for elimination. To convince them otherwise would take more than data. It would take courage. "Lena," Dr. Solis said softly, "you must also prepare yourself. They will attack you as much as the hatchling. They will call you reckless, sentimental, unfit for duty. You must hold steady and speak with clarity. Tomorrow, you are not only defending Ceres, you are defending the heart of what it means to be human." The words settled heavily, but they lit a fire inside her. Lena looked at the hatchling, now nestled in a corner of the carrier, its tail wrapped tightly around its body. "Then I'll fight for both of us. If I lose everything, at least I'll know I didn't stay silent." The hours slipped past. Outside, the alien night deepened, stars casting pale light over the barren frontier. Inside, the medical ward became a place of preparation, a fortress built on hope and determination. Lena's notes piled higher. Recordings captured every chirp and movement, and Dr. Solis drafted arguments grounded in both science and treaty law. By dawn, fatigue clung to them like chains, yet neither gave in to sleep. When Dr. Solis returned from a brief break, she found Lena still awake, watching Ceres explore the enclosure with small but determined steps. "Look at this," Lena said, pointing to her notes. "Its neurological responses are far above expected levels. It might even suggest heightened intelligence." "Doctor." Solis studied the data and nodded slowly. "This could be our strongest point. Enhanced intelligence may outweigh the flaw in its wing. The Draconians value strength, but they also respect strategy and power of mind. If we show this hatchling could grow into something extraordinary, they may listen." Lena leaned back, exhaustion heavy in her eyes, but fire still in her heart. "Then that's the story we take into that room. Not a flawed creature doomed to fail, but a miracle proving that survival doesn't always follow their rules." The hatchling chirped, almost as if in agreement, and stretched its wings once more. The bent wing refused to extend fully, but Ceres adapted, using its tail for balance as it tried to climb a padded surface. Determination radiated from its small body. The sight gave Lena the strength she needed. She carefully stroked the glass of the carrier. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Dr. Solis glanced at the chronometer. 3 hours until the hearing. Get some rest if you can. I'll finalize the petition and prepare our arguments." Rest, however, was impossible. Lena sat beside the carrier, whispering softly to the hatchling, committing every sound and movement to memory. She knew the hours ahead would be the most difficult of her life. The first light of morning filtered into the outpost. The chamber where judgment would be passed was already being prepared. Soon, humans and Draconians would gather, and the fragile bond between species would be tested. But in this final hour of night, surrounded by silence and the steady rhythm of life inside the carrier, Lena felt ready. Fear still lingered, but determination burned brighter. Tomorrow, she would stand before the council not only as a nurse, but as a defender of life itself. And as Ceres pressed its small head against the glass, eyes shining with trust, Lena made a promise in her heart. No matter what came, she would fight until her last breath. The main hall of Outpost Haven 9 had been transformed into a tribunal chamber. Rows of human staff sat nervously at one side, while towering Draconian officials filled the other, their scaled bodies gleaming under the lights. At the center of the room was a long table where the dispute would be heard. Tension hung in the air, so heavy that every breath felt weighed down. Lena Morven walked into the chamber with careful steps, carrying the small carrier that held Ceres. The hatchling shifted inside, chirping softly, its eyes glowing like polished amber stones. Each sound seemed to echo in the chamber, drawing the attention of both humans and Draconians. Beside her, Dr. Marin Solis carried a tablet stacked with notes and evidence. Director Halvik already sat at one end of the table, his face pale and tense. Across from him was Governor Sevrak, crimson scales polished to a shine, his posture rigid with authority. Beside Sevrak was Drovan, the scientist, her gaze sharp and unforgiving. In the center sat Envoy Jalen Kerr, a mediator from the Interstellar Council, chosen to ensure fairness between species. "This session will begin," Jalen said, her voice calm but commanding. "We are here to decide the fate of the hatchling known as Ceres, and to judge the actions of Nurse Lena Morven. Both sides will present their cases. Point. The truth will guide our decision." Governor Sevrak spoke first. His words carried power like a hammer striking steel. "The laws are clear. Humans are forbidden from interfering with native species. This egg was abandoned because it was defective. Nurse Morven not only interfered, but defied our sovereignty. To preserve this aberration is to weaken the balance of nature. We demand termination of the hatchling and punishment for the human who acted against law. The draconian audience hissed their approval, their eyes glowing with agreement. Lena felt her chest tighten, but she forced herself to stay calm. Then it was Dr. Solis's turn. She rose with steady confidence. Governor, esteemed officials, we do not deny that laws exist, but this is not simply a matter of law. This is a matter of life. Ceres is alive and thriving under care. Though imperfect, the hatchling has shown intelligence, resilience, and adaptability. These are traits that cannot be ignored. Our treaty demands that ethical conflicts be reviewed, and this is exactly such a conflict. She presented the data: growth charts, reflex measurements, cognitive responses. Each screen lit up with evidence that Ceres was not weak, but extraordinary. Murmurs spread through the human audience, and even a few draconians shifted uneasily. Dravan leaned forward, her claws tapping against the table. All irrelevant. The wing deformity will ensure the creature never survives in the wild. Weakness must be removed for the species to endure. Lena finally spoke, her voice quiet but clear. With respect, survival is more than perfection. Survival is adaptation. Ceres has already shown the ability to overcome limits. Maybe the wing is flawed, but the mind is strong. Is intelligence not also strength? A ripple moved through the chamber. Governor Sevrak's eyes narrowed, his voice low with contempt. Human sentimentality. You speak of feelings, not facts. Before Lena could respond, a sound interrupted the chamber. The hatchling inside the carrier stirred restlessly, then pressed against the transparent surface. Lena hesitated, then opened the hatch with careful hands. Ceres crawled out onto the table, its small claws tapping against the surface. The room fell silent. Every eye followed the fragile creature as it looked around the chamber. Its bent wing folded awkwardly, but its movements were steady. Then, without warning, Ceres spread both wings as far as it could and gave a determined cry. Its chest expanded, and a sudden burst of blue fire flared from its mouth, small but bright, lighting the chamber in a dazzling glow. Gasps filled the room. Even Sevrak leaned back, his eyes flashing with surprise. Fire at such an early stage was unheard of. The hatchling stood trembling but proud, its amber gaze fixed on the officials as though challenging their judgment. In that single moment, weakness became strength, and silence became power. Trend in Voy Jalen broke the stunned quiet. The evidence is undeniable. This hatchling demonstrates unique ability and extraordinary will. To destroy it would be to destroy potential that may shape the future of this world. My ruling is clear. Ceres will not be terminated. Custody will remain with human medical supervision under council oversight. This tribunal is concluded. The decision echoed through the chamber. The humans exhaled in relief, while the draconians shifted uneasily but said no more. Governor Sevrak's glare burned like fire, but he said nothing, his pride wounded by what he had witnessed. Lena lifted Ceres gently into her arms. The hatchling pressed its head against her chest, chirping softly as if sensing victory. Her heart swelled with relief and wonder. She had risked everything, yet in the end, compassion and courage had prevailed. Director Halvik approached quietly, his voice low. You've changed more than the fate of one hatchling, Nurse Morven. today may reshape how our people and theirs see life itself. Lena nodded, stroking Saris's head gently. Sometimes it takes only one small life to show us the truth. As the chamber emptied, she stood alone with Dr. Solis and Saris. The hatchling's flame had not only silenced a room, it had lit the beginning of a new path. Lena whispered a promise to the creature in her arms. No matter what comes, we'll walk this future together. And with that, the story of forbidden birth and fierce judgment found its ending, not in destruction, but in hope.